Welcome closers. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, lead nurturing. So what is it? Lead nurturing is basically the art of staying in front of prospects until they're actually ready to buy. Why is that so important? Because the reality is that when you get contacted by a prospect, 25% of those people are never going to go anywhere. It's not going to turn into a sales opportunity for anybody. 25% of those people are going to buy from someone. 50% of those folks just aren't ready to buy yet, even though they are genuinely interested. And so early on, when we were kind of thinking about this problem, thinking about how to help our customers do a better job of lead nurturing, a lot of that concern from us came from the fact that many of our customers are very dismissive of that 50% that aren't ready to buy. We hear words like tire kicker, somebody that's yanking your chain, wasting your time. I'm busy doing my work. I don't have time to talk to somebody that's just price shopping, looking for information, etc. So what my encouragement is to completely reorient that attitude and instead focus on building the asset of your list long-term. And that's what those prospects represent. People like me, you, that have a whole host of products or services that we may be considering buying. Could be a new car, could be a new house, where we're genuinely interested, we're just not ready to buy today. And that's natural for people to go back and forth between being in the prospect category, meaning interested but not ready to buy, and the lead category, meaning interested and ready to buy. Those two categories, they're intermingled and people go back and forth. I was ready, circumstances changed, and now I'm still interested but not quite ready. 6 months from now, I'm actually going to buy from someone. So we want to acknowledge that natural organic cycle of people moving back and forth in that process and figuring out how do we crack that nut in order to stay in front of people so that whenever they're ready to buy, we're there and we're the preferred vendor of choice. So let's get into some of the specifics. For some of you, you've already done some content. You heard blogging was a good idea. You made some videos. You had a PDF, a download produced for your website. All of those things are fantastic. The question is, how do we get maximal value? The sad reality is, it's not true to say, if you build it, they will come. Great content gets neglected, sat on, buried, page 10 of Google. Having some visibility in the organic rankings, that's fantastic. We want to do that. We want to make sure that it's getting as much eyeballs on it as possible. But that being said, even if somebody does come to your website, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a mechanism to initiate a long-term relationship. And that gets us into the topic of the typical sales process versus the ideal sales process. In the typical sales process, you've earned some traffic in some way. It could be paid, it could be organic, but you've done enough to get somebody to your website. But in the typical sales process, there's nothing to do, particularly for those people that want more information, but they don't want to have a sales conversation right now, right? That's folks like me. I'm thinking about buying a car, but I really don't want to talk to a car salesman right now. There's got to be something in between. And so in the typical sales process, when somebody gets to your website and they have nothing to do, they have no way to get more information without having a sales conversation, what do? They bounce. And that is the end of the life cycle with that prospect. But what about the next one? What about that person that actually does get to the next step? They filled out that contact us form page and you got the email, you called them back, you had an initial conversation, things went well, seemed promising, but again, for whatever reason, they're not ready to buy right now. How do we address that situation? Well, if you have a typical sales process, you do nothing. You wait for that person to follow up with you at some point in time on a wing and a prayer. We hope it works out, maybe, maybe not. Most of the time, it doesn't work out. And so that lead that you worked for and you earned now goes in the trash can. Last leg of the typical sales process is the situation where you've managed to actually close a deal, you have a new customer, and 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, whatever it is, the discontentment starts to come in. And what's so interesting is that the number one reason that people switch vendors, it's not because they were really upset. It's not because the vendor screwed up. There's a long laundry list of things that you would think that it may be. Number one reason, apathy. Nothing. People just feel nothing towards your brand. It's a state of emotionlessness, and it's a state of not being anchored in the relationship that allows another vendor to come along and pick off your customers. So with that being said, let's now transition to talking about the ideal process, the ideal sales kind of flow to where we can flip that on its head. The first thing is that when somebody comes to your website, they actually have things to do. So rather than being forced to get funneled through a contact us form, they can get funneled through a form that is more centered around getting an offer. This could be a video, it could be a download, a PDF, it could be a market snapshot report, whatever it may be. This is a quid pro quo. I give you my email address and I get something of value immediately, which is not your sales pitch. There has to be more value than that that's created in the process. So step number one, have an offer, capture that person and add them to your list. Step number two, for those folks that have actually filled out a contact us form, meaning they've self-qualified and raised their hand and said, hey, ready to have a sales conversation. If that conversation doesn't go anywhere, that's not the end of the conversation. You actually are committed to staying in front of them over the long haul. We talked earlier about content. This is how we get maximum ROI on that content. Repackage it, recycle it, send it out over the long haul, and maintain permission to maintain that relationship with people at month 3, 6, 9, 12, whenever somebody's ready to buy. Two things happen. The first thing is you're still in touch with them. The second thing is you're the only person that still is in touch with them, and therefore you become the default vendor of choice. And we all experience this in a bunch of different categories, right? When you think about buying a car, we're not aware of the several hundred car manufacturers that exist. We could probably name 5, and those 5 become the universe of options. It's the same thing with soft drinks. It's the same thing with sports teams. And so in that same regard, when somebody is thinking about hiring a property manager, you want to be on the short list, and ideally, you want to be the only person on the list. And if we're talking about long-term follow-up and how poorly that's frequently done, that's actually a viable opportunity for your business. So taking this full circle, lead nurturing, it's the golden opportunity. It's the upfront investment that you're going to be able to make in your business that you're going to amortize in year 1, year 2, year 3. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And I can say this from firsthand experience because I am the chief of sinners and have personally screwed this up in my own business. Early on, we got content. We understood that it was valuable. We made the investment. We didn't do capture. We didn't do email list building. And as a result, I can say painfully firsthand that we produced some amazing content. We have one resource in particular that ended up generating over 1 million page views, 5,000 direct sales ready leads that were hot qualified and made us money. But what did we miss out on? The 15,000 people that would have been ready to join an email list to begin a long-term relationship. And we missed out on it because we just were oblivious to lead nurturing and weren't doing any kind of form capture and email list building. That was a painful experience, but learn from my failure. Take the first step, which is setting up an email list and creating a brief sequence of emails. These are emails that could go out and be targeting the first 30 days or the first 3 months, but have a coherent sequence where we're basically saying we're going to start off with an intro email that introduces the brand and what we do, and then have a sequence of educational emails. Early on, the cadence and the sequence can be shorter. Let's say within the first 60 days, you could send emails as often as on a weekly basis. Once we get past that 3-month mark, we're going to need to space those out a bit more. We could bump that out to 2 weeks, then eventually out to once a month, to where we're still staying in front of people, but we're not being annoying. It's that kind of fine art that we're going to have to balance over time. But the point is, start the conversation, maintain the conversation. It'll pay huge dividends in your business. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon.